Excuse me. Okay, make sure I'm not glaring up and everything. Maybe turn that a little bit that way, maybe. I really got to do a little different light. Guys, I'm back from my gathering. Um, it went really, really well. I got lucky and the weather was really good. We only had rain one day, and that was on Saturday morning for maybe 2 hours there. It rained a little bit and then it cleared up. Uh, and then everything broke up Sunday and everybody went home but one or two people. And then afterwards, the bottom fell out, but it was good. Good evening, Diane, Garen, CJ. How you doing? Hope everybody's doing well. And they've been okay in these weather we've been having rolling through, but it is spring. Spring is time for storms and stuff like that. Kodak, Chuck, Deanna, hello. Hiram, hello. Cosmic, I'm sorry I mispronounced that. Kamaeq. Terry, Ryan, Rocklick, good evening. Hope everybody's having a good day. Well, you've had 2 weeks to come up with questions, so if you got a question for me, throw it out there. I'll be glad to jump on it. Hiram, I believe we're going to have a really wet spring and summer. Probably. Usually whenever a El Nino breaks up, which we have this time, we get a condition here in the South where it rains starting in June, and about every day it rains, and the temperature really can't get as high as it normally would be because it rains every day. So it's kind of hot and muggy in the morning, and about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, the rains come in and cools everything off. And it's only in August when we get those dog days of heat. So I'm kind of hoping for that, really, of it being a kind of a wet, cool summer relatively. Play us in. Good evening. Hello, Cody, to Texas, and greetings to Red Sorghum. Awesome. From California. Hiram in Florida. Good. Garen, yeah, we were okay. It was on Friday, and I mentioned this to people there at the camp. We had a real strong wind flow coming up off the Gulf, and you could actually smell salt water in the air. And it's very difficult for them storms to kind of coalesce in that condition. It keeps them broke up. They're just not, they're too chaotic to form those really powerful supercells. Now, north of there, yeah. But what you saw hitting in Mississippi and all of that, that'd come off of Texas and then it formed up good, so to speak, so that when it rolled into Mississippi, it was well formed. And we didn't. We were kind of broke up, so we didn't get it so bad here. Like I said, we had good weather up until Monday, really. Mark, will you be making more camp cooking videos? Absolutely. In fact, I got a new stove to play with at this event. And so I've got several things in line for that. And those are coming. I'm going to have several more recipes and things to bring out to you. Good evening, Ronald and Richard. So if you're going squirrel hunting, you want to shoot the guy squirrel right, not the mama. Yeah, but you can't tell them apart. Squirrel season is set up in a certain time because that's before breeding season. And so you therefore would have less chance of stranding a small squirrel that was depending on its mama. That's the reason they hunt them at that time of the year. And that's the reason they cut it off, because right after that in March is whenever we have breeding season starts, and you could have babies starting in May, even dropping babies. And so that's why they do it, so to limit that problem. Terry, is there any info yet on the reintroduction of GoX powder? I haven't heard anything. I heard that they were supposed to do that in January as well, but I have not heard any posts or whatever. The last thing I heard was a company was taking it over. They were upgrading their facility to handle the production, a bigger demand, But I have not heard them going into operation yet. Blackie, I've received a possum pouch canvas poncho today, along with a 12 by 12 tarp. The poncho is outstanding and full blown itself. Have you seen one? I saw one from wow, Jay. At one of the events, he had one of the ponchos. They're nice. I just haven't personally got one yet, but I've seen one. Hello, Apex, San Antonio. Ryan, what about the tall and size? That I don't know. The one I saw seemed to be a good size. Good evening, Bear. Glad you're in the house. Justin, good evening. Just say, "Okay, got you." What was the name and the location of the big military surplus near you? That is Kaufman's with a K. Kaufmans. Military surplus, Sampson, Alabama. Phone number 334 379. No, excuse me. 334 898 1770. Call up the ladies, tell them that Blackie sent you, and they'll hand select anything you need if they have it in stock. Yeah, Bear, Justin wants to know if you tried that coffee he gave you yet. Louisiana Gray, good evening. Anger Ranger, hello. Diane, can you fix a bad gap on a percussion revolver? It gets a little difficult. Can it be done? Yes, but it becomes something that's very, very difficult. You can either set the barrel back closer. That requires you to remove metal at the base and to deepen the hole in the slot, and etc. It really becomes a headache. And then the base pin has to be taken out, turned on a lathe, put back to index everything back. Physically, yes, it can be done, but really, it's really not worth the effort, to be honest. Once one gets shot, do we have a big gap in it? That's when a lot of times they would get traded off to those Civil War reenactors who are just shooting blanks anyway. And it don't really matter, so to speak. But a new wedge may tighten it up a little, but there's very little you can do beyond that. Okay, let's see. Randy, good evening to Arkansas. Okay, Terry. Bear's the one that threw that out there as a joke about me doing a cookbook. And then I started throwing it back at him. I've already got too many irons in the fire. I'm not doing a cookbook. I told Bear if he wants to do a good cookbook, that's great. Go right ahead. But I'm not doing a cookbook at this time. It was Bear's idea in one of the videos to throw that at me that I was going to be doing a cookbook as a joke. And I keep saying, no, Bear's doing the cookbook. But at this time, they ain't one in the operation yet. Okay. Maybe down the line, but not right now. I just got way too many irons in the fire for me to be able to do that. Garen, yeah, that was really good. Scab asked us, would we be willing to sit there on like a board and do it? And I said, absolutely. I enjoy Scab's company. He's very knowledgeable on knives. He really is. Just an all-around great guy. Worm Wrangler, hello to California. Yeah, just next, the cookbook. I told him I was going to hit him with the shovel. Good evening, Jonathan. Terry, thank you. Earl, good evening. Grant, not at the moment. What happened was, like I detailed in the video, I was working with Bombproof Bushcraft and Possum Pouch, and they had imported blankets before. And so we were at Central Ohio, and we got to talking about this, about doing a blackbird and etc. and doing those blankets. And we put in the order, and every time they had put in an order before, you put your order down now, and like 4 months later, they show up. And this time you saw what happened. It was a year before we got those blankets. So it's just not something we want to step back off into, because, you know, if I had them sitting in front of me, yeah, I'd be willing to do it. But at the same time, the delays, all the things going on through Europe and everything else, it's just too big a risk for us to put the money up to do it, and then the blankets just simply never show up, or for you guys to pay for a blanket and then suddenly, again, they just not going to show up because the company on that side of the pond decides that we're not important, or they're going to close down or whatever. So it really, we were sweating it, whether or not we were going to get them things in. They kept saying, oh yeah, we're sending them, we're setting them, and deadline after deadline just kept going by, and they just kept, oh yeah, they're on the loom right now. And you're at the mercy of a big company. And that's what, you know, we don't plan at this time to bring those back. Snapper, good evening, sir. Kenneth, good. Those Danner boots are really good boots. Especially, what about a book about knots or wild edibles? I will be including in my Master Woodsman book a section on knots, real practical, real world knots. But I have not. I don't know. I'm a little bit apprehensive about talking about any wild edibles. I know how to do enough for me. But the thing about it is when you start talking about things like that, I'm not there with you. And a little bit of knowledge is more dangerous than no knowledge, because my fear is that somebody will misinterpret something I say or write down and eat something that would get them pretty sick. So I'm going to kind of hang back from wild edibles. That's like doing mushrooms and stuff like that. That needs to be a personal thing where you do your own research and do it, because it's just too big a risk for somebody to make a minor mistake and really get sick. And so that's something that I try to avoid doing. Okay. Lonnie, good evening. What about the Rock Island 45? Good gun. The Rock Islands do not have good finish, but there are actually pretty good guns. And I've had Rock Island 1911. My friend Micah has had a 1911, and they have held up very well and do very well. So is it a $1,500 race gun? No. But will it do the job of a 1911 for basic target work, self-defense, and etc.? Absolutely. And the finish, you can always improve the finish. But the quality of the gun seems to be pretty good, at least in my experience. Grant, thank you very much. Gulf Coast, glad you did. Enjoyed seeing y'all. I have seen several A.G. Russells, but I'm not familiar with the Walker knife. Cheddar, no, it's actually a crushable wool. You can actually wad it up and it'll pop back. It's crushable wool. Meant to be a Boy Scout. Boy Scout Explore. Let me get. Hold on, we had technical difficulty. Boy Scout Explorers Scoutmaster hat. There's very dangerous on a Scrabble board. And got it in 1993. And I have a brand new one identical to this. I bought two. After I got the first one in, I liked it so much I bought my second, and it's in storage up here in the top of a closet. So when this one finally gives up the ghost, I've got a replacement. So hopefully that'll keep me for the rest of my days. Cheddar, one of the major problems was a 22 Magnum. And this is true of all 22 Magnum and a handgun. Several years ago, there was the AMX semi-automatic. I can see it in my head. I can't remember that. Automag. That was it. The 22 Automag. Absolutely reliable with Winchester 22 Magnums. Jammed on every one with everything else. Period. The dimensions of a 22 Magnum are slightly different. That's the first point. The second thing is the thickness of the rim makes a difference. That's the reason you don't see any target rifles really built in 22 Magnum. There just simply isn't a big enough demand for them to work on it to that point. So you see 22 long rifles and target 22 long rifles, but you don't see 22 Magnum rifles. And it's because that they've got the power, they got everything else. But the thickness of the rim can cause jamming. And in fact, in Olympic 22 shooting, they have a device that makes the rims the same size in rimfire, and that's very critical for accuracy. The 22 Magnum being a different size case, they don't have any such thing. And so like that Automag, if you put Winchester in it, man, it ran fantastic. But you try to drop any other kind of 22 Magnum in it, and it was just a single shot. Bang, you had to work it every time. And it was just, they're so finicky because of that. So when somebody says this 22 is a little finicky, if it's a Magnum, I assume it. Now the Kel-Tex that's got that 30 round mag, I've had several friends that have had them and really loved them. So I've kind of entertained the idea of getting me one of those to play with. It may have worked out that inconsistency, and therefore it will use different ammunition well. Hopefully. Like I said, if I can get one, I'm going to try it out. Aaron, yeah, you've had a Rock Island Armory 1911 for close to 7 years and put over 1,400 rounds through it, only 3 stoppages, 0 place parts. Those are good. You know, like I said, when I got mine in, I was getting it because it was cheaper. I expected it to jam. It didn't, you know. It held a decent group. No, not a one whole group. It had a group about like that, at combat range. But it did it consistently. It didn't wander around. It was always the same place. And it didn't matter what ammo I fed it, from good hollow points to that cheapest stuff you could find. It was that size group, and it was in the same place. That's all I can ask of a combat gun. To be absolutely reliable and hit the same place every time, whatever ammunition I stuff in it. That's all I ask. Oh, yeah, Snapper, what are my thoughts on the Colt 1908 Pocket? Good little gun. I've had 2 and really, really liked them. They were compact, shot well, grouped well, and were fairly reliable. Space Monkey, exactly. K-Town, good evening. Okay. Okay. I have a 22 long rifle pistol that only likes CCI mini mag. Some people have preferred exactly. Some are really delicate in how tight tolerance they can be, and some will feed anything, but they normally don't shoot that great of groups. So you got that pendulum. Do you want absolutely reliable, or do you want pinpoint accuracy? And pinpoint accuracy usually comes with a specific brand because they set the gun up for that brand. So years ago, there was a very small, compact 45 ACP that had a 5-round magazine, little bitty pocket size, back in the 70s. But it was only to be loaded with 45 silver tips because it was made up exactly for that cartridge. If you tried to put anything else in it, it either wouldn't feed or it would jam or it wouldn't eject. But the chamber was made up for that exact profile of ammo. And at that time, it was one of the best there was for self-defense carry. So they set that gun up, basically handmade them to run just with that. So it was super sticklish. Absolutely reliable, but super sticklish. Garen, what was the break action H&R 22 Magnum revolver? Ooh, there you got me. I don't know. I know what you're talking about. I know the 999 was the 22 long rifle version, and I believe they did have a 22 Magnum, but I don't recall the number on that one. Oh, Donald, like it. Really do like it. Very nice. I've added it to my collection back there. So thank you very much for sending that. I greatly appreciate it. Observation post. Good evening. Terry, that 62 pocket police and 380, those look real interesting, don't they? That would probably be just a fun gun to play with. And it's one of those things that, God knows the amount of single action armies, cap and ball revolvers I've had. And back in the late 90s when Grin came up, started making cartridge conversions. And at first it was in 38 special, or excuse me, 38 long coat. And then Uberti and then picked it up and started doing conversions. I mean, that was exciting to add to your collection, the transition guns and etc. But now they're bringing out that. I mean, so many of those pocket guns were converted to rimfire or centerfire that it's hard to find a percussion gun in any of those small guns because almost all of them were converted. It was the perfect little hideout carry gun, and by far in the old west, if you encountered somebody armed with a Colt, he was probably going to be armed with a pocket gun, more so than the big guns because they outsold sometimes 2 and 3 to 1 any of the models you could name, and you had to carry them in a holster or something big. And most people preferred to carry a gun in them big pockets they had in their suit coats and stuff. And one of them little bitty old pocket guns just dropped in and worked just fine, especially with like a 4-inch barrel or something like that. And a lot of gunsmiths made a lot of money bobbing barrels and not even worry about putting a front sight on it because it's 10 feet or less. You just center it up and pull the trigger. So they were real interesting guns. Wow, cool. Aaron, good job. Grant, Justin keeps bugging me to come to Texas, and William Collins wants me to come to Texas. So we haven't ironed out anything yet, but you never know. We may do something in Texas. We'll see. The great subcontinent of Texas. There's Texas and the rest of the country. Buddy of mine that's born in Austin said that there's Texas and then there's the rest of them states. So yes, Bear, we do. I want to run some lead soon before it gets hot. I ran out last time, and I'm needing some 375s and some 44s. So yeah, let's get together maybe next week when we get together. We'll go down there to the dog pen and we'll run some bullets. Garen, you had one of the 999s. I have wanted one of them since I was young. Really do. You remember they made a short barrel and the long barrel. I didn't care. Either one. And I have held them in my hand probably 50 times and either didn't have the money or the gun wasn't for sale. And so I thought about, now that I've got my percussion revolver collection about where I want it, where I want to go next. And I think I want one of them 999s. I know they ain't made them in years, but I'll start looking around, see if I can find somebody that's got one that wants to horse trade or something. Space Monkey, yeah, 1 in 357. Most versatile because you can take and put a round ball with just a small powder charge into a 38 special case, and you can shoot rabbits and squirrels. I mean, it's just pop. Same time, you drop in a full power 38, drop in a 357. You've got a power band there, and if you get a lever action to go with it, you've got it all. I had a short trapper in 357 that I could do that in. I hand loaded sized round ball that were 358 is what I got a mold for, and I would run that through and load it into the case with a small powder charge on it, and the ball left the barrel at about 850 feet per second, which was perfect for shooting rabbits and squirrels and stuff up close. It was like shooting it with a 22, but it was a bigger ball, right? Then I could drop a standard 38 into it, and that left the barrel because you're adding one. All of the revolver cartridges are set up for that cylinder gap to lose pressure. So the powder charges are there to kind of equalize that out. Well, I'm putting in a lock breech of a lever action rifle. And so I'm not losing. So I'm gaining 3 to 5 to 800 feet, depending on the load, feet per second. And so that standard 38 loaded into it is leaving the barrel at 357 ballistic out of the handgun, 6-inch handgun. Now when I load a full bore 357 into that rifle and I shoot, the bullets leaving the barrel at the same velocity, speed, and weight as a 30-30. It's a fatter bullet. Really, it's a 35 Remington at that point, because the weight and speed of the bullet was the same as a 35 Remington, and that's a favorite bear cartridge up in Maine and stuff. So I could take anything on the North American continent with that little 6.5 pound carbine up close within 100 yards or so. And that is the most versatile, is a 38 in the 357, etc. K-Town, Blackie, what's your favorite compass? Do you use Ranger beads? Bears got me thinking about my Sunto. Okay. If I'm doing basic navigation, just, like I talk about navigation with nothing, just general directions, most compasses will work. I'm not too particular. I use Bruins, I use Suntos, and I've got a Ranger with the mirror on it. I want to say it's the Brunion Ranger. It might be wrong. I'm saying the wrong name. But if we're doing precision navigation, where I've got to hit a target way over yonder, then I was trained to use a Kaminga. And so that's what I use for that. But there are better compasses available. That was just my experience of it. Usually I don't need to navigate that tight. It's just get me in and out of that valley, back to the road to come back to my car. I don't have to hit that 1 meter square like we did in orienteering. I could do it. I learned to do it. But at the same time, most military type navigations is way overcomplicated because, again, you're trying to hit that 1 meter, to be picked up or put targets or artillery or whatever. They got to be on that 1 meter. But the average person, if I'm within 100 yards of it, I can find it, And so for me, that Brun or Sunto Ranger, that gray cover you open up, there's a mirror in it. That's what I use for general navigation. I will use Ranger beads when we're doing pace counts. And in the thick cover that I'm usually in, you need to do that. But even then, you're having to do this to get around the gear, around the brush and stuff. Out west, where they've got an open area where they can pace it out better, those really come into their own real quick. Right, Cheddar. Yeah, the Ruger Mark 1, 2, 3, 4. I think they're up to 5 now. Yeah, great guns, and they break down easy for cleaning. Terry, that'd be cool. I've got a friend of mine who has a Colt Woodsman exactly like the one I had that I got when I was 13. And it's about 8 miles from me. And it's the daddy of my blood brother. And he's got that gun. And I shot it when I was a teenager because the son would bring it out. And I've asked him repeatedly over these years, if you ever want to get rid of that gun, I want it. And so I keep hoping that I'm going to end up with that Colt Woodsman eventually, because that's one of my all-time favorite, semi-automatic 22 pistols. If I can't have that, it's going to be a Ruger Mark II. I prefer the Mark II against the other ones, just personal preference because I'm old. Good evening, Miss Pam. Glad you made it. Garen, could you add the navigation options that Barry showed on the K-bar to a WCSK? Should be able to. Yes. Hadn't thought about it, but yeah, I should be able to do that. And the bow drill notch in the handle, that can be used for your clock compass. It's just something relatively round that you have a mark of some kind, so I can index to do the stuff. And so yeah, I'm pretty sure we could do it with a WCSK. And that might be a good video to take it and show that. Outdoors with Sean, good evening. Mike Warren, welcome to the thing. Thank you very much for enjoying my channel. Thank you very much for the support. K-Town, exactly. Having a mirror for signaling, being able to see where you can't see with your naked eye is a big thing. Reading it on the compass can be, it has a lot of uses. It really does. And I've used it more than one to get attention. I've been on a lake and somebody I knew was on a boat over yonder. And I hollered and they just forget it. Couldn't hear me for whatever reason. But I could sit there and get focused in and start flashing at them until they finally turned and looked my way. Like, what is that? And then being able to, yo, and get their attention. They work. You can signal a long way with a mirror. Ralph, it's got to fit your hand. That's the thing. Never assume that the gun that's perfect for somebody else is automatically perfect for you. I have 3 very close friends that all of them have Ruger Mark IIs that they have had 30 plus years. Sometimes one of them 40 years, and it fits them like a glove. They shoot it. On the other hand, that Ruger Bearcat, that little 22, man, that looks so awesome. I can't shoot it for crap. It does not fit my hand. And yet my friend Micah has bigger hands and he shoots it wonderfully. But you hand me a Ruger Bearcat and I can't hit the broadside of a bar. And it's like the dimensions are wrong to work with my hand. So I'm constantly fighting, trying to get that gun to work with me. And so, again, the gun's got to fit you. If it fits you, it's fantastic. If it don't fit you, good trade material for the next one. Washburn, Billy, good evening. Chuck, what's the best wow, engage my brain. What's the best survival rifle in your opinion? Okay. A 22 long rifle, bolt action or lever action. I'd really want to go lever action, but would be the ultimate because of the vast majority of ammo I could stockpile for it. Used properly, the amount of game I can harvest with it. Few moving parts and very little wear and tear on those parts. Very light report, so I'm not broadcasting my location long range every time I pull the trigger. So to me, a 22 long rifle, and if I could get like a Winchester 94-22, or one of the Henry 22s, or an old Marlin 39 that's in really good shape, would be a great survival tool for me, because with it I could feed myself real easy and not attract a lot of attention. So I know that a lot of people won't agree with that and they want bigger and better. And yeah, I mean, if I go up and say a 308 scout rifle, fantastic gun for certain applications. When you pull the trigger on a squirrel with a 308, ears and tails ain't much of a meal. And now you got to add in all this other stuff to where I can download that sucker and load up. And where a 22 long rifle can take just about anything, depending on how close you are and how sneaky you are. The biggest grizzly for, I think, 12 years was shot by a 9 or 10-year-old girl that shot it through the ear. Yeah, it was a freak, but you can. I've seen big cows, big bulls drop with a 22 long rifle placed properly. So don't underestimate that little bit of cartridge. It's an ice pick, but you know where to put that ice pick. It's amazing what it can do. And I can have a 5-gallon bucket of 22s to take with me. And that's reason to me it's the best survival gun. Chris P., it comes down to them. The versatility of the 22 long rifle and the 12 gauge. Absolutely. Hand loading the 357 lever action, like I just detailed a minute ago. Yeah, I would do real good with that as well. As long as I got the ability to hand load it, where I can drop it down or up. Ain't nothing on the planet I can't take with it up close. Yeah, Ralph, a good friend of mine, like 2 or 3 of my friends have had those Ruger Bearcats. And man, it's like a match pistol to them. And I thought, man, I love the look of it. I wanted one so small, so compact. My single six, I could outshoot it any day of the week. And I had a single six for 20 years. Now I've got a Heritage Rough Rider with rosewood stocks that I shoot. I've got the 22 long rifle and 20 Magnum cylinder. And I'm very, very happy with that. That's a great kit gun, one to carry in your kit where I'm not planning on needing, but I want something to have, like going fishing or whatever, camping during the summer. That often rides with me. If I'm not, toting one of my cap and balls. And you know me, I love my cap and balls. Oh, and back up. Somebody said something about bear. Oh, any updates video with old Grouch? The man is fascinating, and I'm an avid canoeist. I love to hear more from him. The fire in the canoe blew my mind. I will get with him soon, and we will talk about that. But yeah, it's just he built a wooden box and put about 3 to 4 inches of packed dirt in it, and then he built his fire on top of that, just a small fire. He put charcoal in it first, and then he just added stuff to it. And then he had him a little thing that swing over and he set his pot on, and he's sitting there in the canoe making coffee. I'd be behind him, stomach growling like I'll get out, and he'd be up there in that green canoe staying just ahead of me. And of course, the breeze is carrying it back, and he's sitting there cooking something, not only making coffee, but he's cooking lunch as he's paddling along real slow. And I'm sitting back here smelling bacon cooking and stuff like that. He'd put it on a wire over it so it'd be dripping into the fire. He's sitting there cooking bacon, just, I want to hit him with a paddle sometimes. Love that man to death, but oh boy. Pam, correct. I always say, like the way it looks, pick it up. Like the way it feels in the hand, keep discussing with the person selling it. Exactly. I've had a lot of guns that looked great on the thing, and when I held it in my hand, it just, no. On the other hand, I have had guns that price was right, felt good in my hand, got it, and it just didn't stay with me. It just didn't inspire me somehow, and move on. But when you find the one that really sticks, you don't have to ask the question. It's just, that's the gun. Ralph, what's the difference between a combat rifle and a survival rifle? Survival, you want to take small game. Well, okay. Combat rifles are set up to be very reliable, very rugged, very robust. They're firing an intermediate cartridge, usually somewhere in comparatively 30-30 power range, and that's true of 5.56 and etc. You know, when you really start looking at the numbers, it's comparable to that for whatever they're going to be using. So they're high capacity. They're not known for target accuracy. They're known for reliability. And in fact, the M4's official accuracy is supposed to be able to hit all shots inside of a hula hoop at 300 meters. A 223 varmint cartridge, which is just a standard 223, not the 5.56, a 223 out of a Walmart bolt action varmint gun, had better be able to hit that can at 300 meters, or that ain't a varmint cartridge. See, because you're going for chipmunks and stuff. And so a combat gun is not necessarily the highest accuracy. Its reliability, volume. Does it do well when it's really, really hot, like in a firefight? Does it shed heat well, etc.? Those are the needs of that. A survival rifle doesn't have any of those attributes usually. It has to be accurate. It has to be not a burden to carry. It has to be versatile to be able to take a wide variety of game. And it's got to be easily to maintain and operate in the field with very little supply chain thing, where the assault gun, the military gun, is not. You know, look at any of the military operations and how many guns went south and have to be shipped back to the armor or whatever for repair after every operation, because they're really rough on those guns. Whereas your survival gun, there ain't no armor coming out here. And so it needs to be rugged and reliable and accurate. But I'm not going to be shooting high volumes. I'm not getting in a firefight with a chipmunk. And so therefore it can be more toward the accuracy and reliability than being able to take heat of a white hot barrel, because you done burned through 25 mags in a row, because there's a lot of Indians out there, Mr. Custer. That's the basic difference. A car and a race car. That's kind of like the mindset of it, because a race car goes super fast, don't it? And they rebuild the engine every week. That engine will not hold up. A lot of those really serious race cars might make 1, 2, 3 passes, and then they got to break the engine down and tear it apart and rework it. Whereas that sedan, it better go hundreds of thousands of miles before it slings a rod. That's the mindset. So the survival gun has to be something that will provide and be usable without having that. The combat gun better handle dirt, heat, and it's not meant to be that accurate. It's meant to be that rugged and reliable. That's the difference. I hope that answers the question. Choir boys, good evening, sir. Yes, sir. I just did a video, advanced woodscraft, where I talked about planning gear, meals, and etc. If you'll go back, I think it was last Friday, last Sunday, somewhere in there, fairly recently. It's advanced woodcraft, I believe, lesson 4. That part of it talks about how to prepare menus and things for campouts. I hope that helps. If not, get up with me. I'll be happy to do something specifically for you, brother. Terry, the 1022 is rock solid and reliable as well. It's a little heavy. All of the Ruger guns are overbuilt, but that's one of their shining strengths. And the 1022 has really stood the test of time. I've seen them packed full of mud and everything else, and in the field, take it apart, rinse it out with a canteen, and get it right back in the game. They are rugged and reliable guns, and very rarely have parts breakage. And so the 1022 is a very good gun. Catching up. Just hang on, guys. I'll be back with you in a second. Aaron, yeah, those little mini revolvers. I have one of those, but I put the bigger grip on it. That's sort of my when I got to wear, suit and tie type deal and such. That's when I'll carry that. But they can be decent for what they're designed for up close. But I got to put that bigger grip on it because I can't. That itty bitty can't. No, I like to control it. Okay, now we're caught back up. Washburn Billy, thank you very much, sir. K-Town. Blackie, have you had experience trapping? The rabbits are doing what rabbits do up here, and chickens is getting expensive. Never mind beef. I have, but my trapping was for meat. I didn't do it for fur. I ran conibears and I ran leg holes and a few others. Uh, of the two, I'd recommend the conibears because it's a killing trap. If you're not near anybody's place that's going to have house cats and stuff like that, which would just break my heart if I walked up and found out I'd kill somebody's beloved pet. So that's the reason I don't use them around town. Leg hole, I can turn the animal loose. And I have caught cats and small dogs, and I have turned them loose, and they took off at a dead run, not any worse for the wearer. But for coons and things like that, a 110 conibear, will do the job just like a rat trap. Pow. And along that line, taking wharf rat trap, drill a hole in it, put it on a pecan tree and use a deck screw and anchor it to the tree and set it with black oil, sunflower seeds, and peanut butter. And Skippy will walk down there and pow! It will. We're not talking mouse trap. We're talking about wharf rat traps, just a mouse trap scaled up. And that will harvest squirrels real easy. Why do you put it on the tree? To avoid the neighborhood cats. Put it up the tree and screw it onto it, and it's how I got the squirrels out of my pecan trees one year because the price of pecans had shot through the roof, and squirrels were eating too many. So I thinned out my squirrels, like pow, and skin them up, put them in the freezer. So I have done some, but I don't consider myself an expert. I'm just enough redneck to know how to feed the family with one. That's about it. Aaron, yeah, there's a Guila 60s will do the best hit for that size because you don't have a barrel long enough to get a lot of velocity. So if I can't get velocity, I better have thump. So thank you very much, Chad. Washburn Billy, we got friends in Michigan. I got friends in Michigan, Minnesota, a few other places, and I've seen steelhead. I've never fished for them. Edgar, thank you for dropping in. Chris, have a good night. Yeah, I mean, trapping is trapping is like fishing. I can set up drop lines and trot lines and check it once a day in a river or lake or something like that. And it is constantly trying to provide food for me, whether I'm standing there on the bank or not. Trapping does that on land. It allows me to produce meat on land without me having to be there all the time for active hunting. So I can be doing other projects while, I'm trying to provide meat. And something I learned from Dan Lutz, he said that in Ohio, and this is true of every place, and of course, go within the law, guys, if you're going to get into this. But it said you could not have meat baits near a snare or a trap because wild birds and like hawks and things would swoop down and you'd kill them, and that was protected. You can't trap them. And so he went to the game wardens and he said, okay, I read that and I understand. How far from my gut pile where I'm cleaning can I put up a trap? They didn't have a rule on that. He said, well, I'm not going to put the meat on the trap. But what if I set my traps out, say, 20 yards out from my gut pile? Can I run a snare there? Where they're going to be attracted to the gut pile, but there is no trap on the gut pile. See? So he just made a solid, like a ring of individual all the way around, like a 20-yard wide ring, and put his gut pile in the middle of it. Well, he pulled every predator for 10 miles. So if something gets hung up, he catches it, cleans it, puts the guts on the pile, resets the trap. So it's like an outer ring, and then here's the bait. And they kept he said, I was catching coons and possums and everything else constantly, them just walking into it because of it. That was brilliant to me. And in a survival situation, that would be invaluable, because we knew whenever you caught something on a trot line too small to eat, that turned into bait on the trot line. So clean the fish, always puts the guts back onto the trot line. You're constantly generating bait for the trot line. Mm-hmm. I got you. Well, Benton, and I'll tell it here after I've been asked several times, and I always said no. I said I was not going to Georgia Bushcraft this spring. However, I am sort of an adjunct instructor for the Fuel the Fire group, and they're going to be putting on classes up there at Georgia Bushcraft. And so I was asked by JJ at my event to come up and be part of the group and help put on. So I will be going to Georgia Bushcraft, and possibly I've already put in to teach a class. It's whether or not they say they need me or not. But I'll be at Georgia Bushcraft. And then I will be going to the Pathfinder gathering this year because Trinity of Racked Outdoors has asked me to come up and be at her vendor and be a barker for her vendor. So I will be, this time I'm going to Georgia Bushcraft, which is April, I believe it's 21st, 22nd, 23rd. And then I'll be going to the Pathfinder in, I think it's June, up there. So those, what I've got on the calendar right now, that's what I got. K-Town, I agree with you. Things fishermen know about trout aren't facts, just articles of faith. Absolutely. I've known some really crusty old guys that were experts fishing, and they'd be the first one to tell you that you think you know it all. You don't know jack. Use the same techniques, the same things that have produced before 100 times, and you go out there and not catch a thing. Is it the weather? Is it the light condition? Is it the season? Is it barometric pressure? Is something has happened in this water source that upset them? What? And so that's the reason it's not just going to the market and picking it up. I mean, it's called fishing and it's like hunting. You do your best, but it ain't a guarantee. Yeah, fishing will keep you humble. But my granddaddy always said, line ain't a sin because line's in the Bible with fishing. And of course, somebody always say, oh, really? He'd say, well, yeah, Jonah and the whale. How big was that fish, Jonah? You know, he always said lines in the Bible. Just ask Jonah. How big was that fish, Jonah? You can have a man of God, a pillar of the community. You give him a fishing rod, he's a lying bastard. How big was that fish? Yeah, They're all world records, aren't they? Yeah, Aaron, the rifled and the smoothbore. I've had 870s with a rifled barrel that shot just about like a rifle out to about 75, 80 yards with my hand loads. And then I've had smooth bores that I could stay on, let's say, a tall kitchen can out to 75, maybe a little bit further. I've tried the screw in chokes that were rifled, which there was a gun that was put out, in the late 1800s called a Paradox, a Purdy Paradox. Purdy was the gun company. And it looked like a double barrel 12 gauge. But the last 2 inches of barrel had this aggressive rifling in it. And so you could put 12 gauge shells in it and shoot birds, etc. You could put buckshot or slug in it and shoot. And there was this special mold that made it look kind of like a pudgy Christmas tree. And that would be loaded in a brass shell, and it was guaranteed to put all of its shots in an 8-inch circle at 100 yards, and it had a pop-up rear sight. And it was meant for India, for those rich cats going to India to go and get over there and be able to hunt tiger and hunt birds and rook and all of the above. It was to be one gun. It was a Paradox. It could serve as a double rifle, and it could serve as a shotgun. And I've often wondered why they haven't resurrected that idea, because it did work. And I know that for a while there, you could get screw in chokes. I think Brownells had them that went into 870s that had like a 2-inch real aggressive rifling. And if you shot a smooth slug, do not shoot a rifled slug and a rifled bore, because the riflings fight. A smooth slug goes into a rifled bore so it will grip and turn it into a musket. A rifled slug goes into a smooth bore so that when it comes out, the wind will cause it to spin like a football turn and give you some more accuracy. But I got a really good deal one time on an 870 slug barrel with good sights on it, because the guy couldn't hit the broadside of the barn because he had bought Bernanke rifle slugs and was shooting them out of that gun. And the rifling were fighting each other going down the barrel. And man, you couldn't have stayed on an 18-wheeler at 50 yards with that thing because of it. And it was simply because of that. I shifted, cleaned the barrel, got all the lead out of it, and I shifted to smooth slugs. And man, that thing would group onto a pizza box at 100 yards, And finally, I had a GI that had to have that gun, and I had to let it go. But man, I wish I had that barrel back. Benton, yeah. Early to bed, early to rise, fish like hell, make up lies. There you go. Yeah, K-Time. That's one of the things about swapping out lures and everything else and fishing. There's a lot of intuition and there's a lot of things. And I do a basic fishing that I teach people about, basic colors, basic fishing, and stuff like that, and how I do it, how I approach fishing. And it works for me. Not saying it's the best way, but it works for me. And I don't change lures a whole lot. Change techniques, but I don't change lures a lot. Peter, carpenter's hatchet, can it be a good choice for doing bushcraft tasks? Yes, especially if it depends on the blade, but if you kind of thin it down just a little bit. And I had one, 5, 6 years ago, go look back. I did one where I went and got a American made hatchet from Walmart, and I bobbed the handle down and made it into a bushcraft carving hatchet. for doing tasks and stuff like that. So yeah, they can be made into pretty effective little hatchets for that, especially when you're doing carving or stuff. And you want to hog off the extra wood, get down to the spoon blank. They're very good for that, or other little light tasks. Plus, processing firewood for the camp. We're not toting a big axe. I just need something to make a couple little cuts where I can snap it easier, or I can make a tent peg real quick, things like that. Joseph, welcome to the thing. I hope you do okay with the weather. Yeah, y'all supposed to have that stuff going through the Midwest right now. Hunker down. Henry, yeah, and I saw the improvement they've now done to the Marlin 336, where you can unload it through the loading gate instead of having to cycle them through. The loading gate now is where you can press down on the loading gate and the shell will pop back out. So you can pop out a shell, click, pop out a shell, and unload the gun without having to cycle through the action. That's very nice. That would also mean if I had a topped up magazine and I wanted to change ammunition for whatever reason because of something had come up, maybe I've got it loaded for a light bullet because I'm expecting this, a whitetail to come out thin skinned, and a bear walks up. I could easily, click, pop that shell out, put a new shell in of the heavier, and then jack, and be up to speed much quicker than I would have to, all that other stuff. So I thought that was a really cool idea. John Lattermilk, look at online, look up Georgia Bushcraft Gathering. It's a large gathering. They have vendors and classes and stuff, and it's near Albany, Georgia, at Watkinsville. And they put on like two major events per year. I think there are other events as well, but the two majors are the spring and the fall. And yeah, anybody can go. You can come and take classes or whatever. It's not that cheap, but they do provide a lot of classes, and they do have a lot of good instructors, and they do have a lot of vendors there. So Sports Mobile 83, hopefully next time you'll make it to the gathering. What is your favorite case knife? 3-blade Stockman. I have my grandfather's 3-blade Stockman, my father's 3-blade Stockman, and the one they gave me on my 16th birthday. I have all three of those. They're presently in a safety deposit box because I'm never going to take that to the field. That's an inheritance going to be passed down to my nephew whenever I go. But 3-blade Stockman is my favorite one of the case pocket knives. I've got a lot of experience with those. Adventure and Sebastian, how much is it? I'm sorry, what are you asking? For the knife or what? Justin Coon. Yeah, cut shell and waxers, both. I've done both. Washburn, do you have any video, Blakey, do you have any videos about digging a well when the power's out? I've talked about doing coyote wells way back, like in 2010 or something, of doing a coyote well, but I haven't done anything. I'm sure I've touched on it since then, but it doesn't just ring to my head right now. But I'm coming up on, I believe last I heard, I'm coming up on 1,200 videos. So they're getting a little jumbled, but I know I've covered the topic. I know I have talked about it. Adventure and Sebastian, cool. Living in Bama. You ought to come to the gathering next year when we have the next one. It'll be sometime in March or April. I will announce it right after Christmas because I got to gauge our weather. And this year I guessed right. I got lucky. Weather was beautiful. So I'm trying to dial it into the weather. Kenneth, Blackie, have you or anyone ever used one of the steel axes? I have not. Um, I know what you're talking about, but I have not personally had any experience with them. CJ, what's the best way to thin a hatchet if it's been so thick? Belt grinder. Turn a belt sander upside down, lock it in a vise or something so the belt's running. Make sure it's running away from you. Lay the blade up there and let it run to thin it down. You can do it with a filer, but it's going to take a lot longer. And I would use somewhere along like 400 grit belt. Wet dry is best. Dip the hatchet, come up, run it. Only run it back and forth for like 30 seconds. Take it off, put it back in water. Let it cool. Flip to the other side. Do the same thing. Hold it up. Make sure the two sides are staying even. Don't get one side more than the other and just thin it down just a little bit. Depends on the hatchet to begin with, but a lot of those framing hatchets and working hatchets are kind of blunt because what they're being used in is a lot of times on a roof and you're just cutting a shingle in half. They don't want it so thin and sharp that it cuts the roof. See, they want you to be able to bump it up against a piece of plywood and it just leave a mark on the plywood being kind of blunt. So it kind of pinch the shingle in half, but not cut into the plywood base. I'm wanting to use it for wood cutting, so I need to sharpen it more. So from the edge, come back down, say an inch. From the very tip, 1 inch back. Thin that down where you've got a good edge. That's my recommendation. K-Town, yeah, taking a plastic bag and putting it over a limb, especially something real leafy of a plant that's not toxic or resonance, because that can taint the water a little bit. You will get the evaporation of the tree, and it works better than a solar still. I can tell you that from experience here in Alabama. I've even put them over pine trees before ends of limb and got a usable amount of water out of each one. A lot of times it's no more than like a shot glass out of a pine, but a big leafy like a sweet gum or water oak, absolutely the best because they pump a lot of water out of them. If the leaf is kind of soft, you'll get more water. If it's hard and waxy, you won't get nearly as much water. Enu, well, hello. My kid wants me to say hi and hear you respond. Blackie says hello. Aaron, I will be doing more with my canteen cook set. In fact, I've got 2 videos listed I'm going to be doing soon. My gathering coming up kind of put me off deck, for the last 4 weeks. It's either I've been getting things arranged, set up, getting ready to go, being gone. I was gone 8 days from home, one way or the other. I was actually at camp for 6 days, and then getting home recycling. So I am a little bit behind, but I am gonna be doing canteen cooking stuff coming up pretty soon. We're gonna make some more stuff. Keystone, snow up there in the mountains. That's awesome, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's got a lot of pretty country in it. Oh yeah, Washburn Billy making a drop bucket where you put the pipe down. It's a narrow well, and you have a weighted to go down and scoop up. As long as you got a good water flow at the bottom of it, you can have a water flow that's only, depends. I've seen shallow wells like that put in at gardens and stuff, kind of on the fly, where they didn't want to use up water from their faucet because they had to pay for that, and they've sunk pipes down 20, 25 feet, 30 feet sometimes, and gotten water coming in. And as long as the water depth, you had to figure out the depth of the water. And so what they did was they took a fishing weight and they took and tied about every 3 inches a piece of cloth up about 3 foot, and then slowly lowered it down until it touched. And when the line went to start going slack, they stopped. The man was on bottom. And then bring it back up and see how deep the water was in the pipe. And so if the water was 6 inches deep in the pipe, then all you can do is a dipper that's like 5 inches or 4 inches. You sink in there and pour over. But if it was like 2, 3 feet, then they could put a 24-inch, his was like 5 feet. So he was able to drop a 36-inch piece of 3-inch diameter pipe down thing and then bring it back up, and got quite a bit of water in every run with that. And that's how he was watering his garden, was that a dipper. We used to call it a dipper instead of calling it like a dipper well or whatever. We just call it dipper, so because you were just dipping. Yes, you can put your own well in that uses a pitcher pump. And there are a lot of things out there. Go look on YouTube, look up homestead well, hand dug well, handmade well, etc. And you can take steel pipe and just a ramming weight to get it down there. Now, here's the thing a lot of people don't get. Pitcher pumps are bad to deprime. And what that means is it loses the suction. You got to pour water down it to get it going again. A lot of those pitcher pumps were used daily or sometimes several times daily. And so when you would pump, on the bottom end of it, you've got the thing that's lifting up and shoving water up the pipe. When you stop and it pours over the top, when you stop, it starts leaking back down. And sometimes you get to a point that you pump and pump and pump and pump and pump, and it just never gets to the top again. Now you got to pour water down the pipe to get it to lift that far. And I've known a lot of homesteads that had old pitcher pumps, but they were using them, like I said, every day. So it never had the time to drain down far enough to be completely useless. But one that I'll use once a week or so, sometimes you got to pour water down there to get it primed. Priming the pump to get it going again. Lonnie Long, Blackie, what's your most favorite activity to do when you head out into the woods? I love to build a camp. I love to do dingle sticks and things. I love to sit there and carve up little things to put onto the trees to be a place to hang a pack, or make a raised cooking area on the side of a tree, or build tables or chairs or whatever. If you stuck me in this camp and told me I can't leave, you got to stay here, for the next week, and there's nothing and nobody to talk to, I'm going to start whittling. And I'm going to start making little improvements. And that got to be one of my favorite things, is making a witchcraft camp where I make a pot suspension system. I'll build a tripod, and then I'm not happy with the tripod. I got to build a set of cross across there to be able to hang. I start making pot hooks, and bit by bit I start adding until I'm making this, I'm making that. Next thing you know, I'm digging underneath the fire pit to make a ground oven. and I just enjoy building a camp. It's just something I really enjoy. It's very relaxing to me. Garen, I saw an ad for a freeze drying machine to preserve food. Do you think that's a viable option for individuals? Yeah, especially in hard times. When you freeze dry, evaporative dry or whatever those things are, you greatly lengthen the time it's going to be usable. And so, grandma putting up things, they dried foods, they canned foods, they smoked foods, all were forms of preservation, and they were gave different shelf lives that way. And so freeze dry or whatever would be just another peg in the wall. I think all of them are viable because that would take the pressure off of other things like canning and other preserved things, dried things, so that I wouldn't be eating up that larder so fast. My dried stuff could be brought in and much easier to transport as well. So yeah, it could be a very viable, and especially even for an individual. In many ways, better for an individual because you got less options you got to worry about. It's just what you like and what you want to preserve. Adventure and Sebastian, hey Blackie, if I made you a knife for free, would you use it in a video? I'd be happy to do a review and give you feedback on a knife. You know, whatever it is, I'll be happy to give you my honest opinion. Now, having said that, I'm absolutely going to be straight up with you that I realize that there are knives that are really great for beginners, not so great for guys with a lot of experience because of whatever. And now the other way, I know knives that are made up really with mindset of somebody with a lot of experience and really ain't a beginner knife. So I bear that in mind whenever I'm looking at a knife and reviewing it about what's the target audience for this knife. And so I'll give you a fair and honest opinion of it. If I like it, great. If I don't like it, great. I'll never do a negative video, but I will give you honest feedback on it. And if I just being honest, if I don't like it, I'll never do the video because I'm not going to badmouth the product. I'll give you honest opinion, feedback, constructive points about it. And then something I do like at any of those levels, I will be happy to do a video on it and talk about it and give you credit for it. And then if it's a knife that I don't want to have in my collection, just not that's bad or anything, I'll give it away at one of my events and pass it on to somebody else. That's what I tend to do. Just straight up, that's the way I do it. Justin, I've seen a pitcher pump with a return to prevent the problem. Yeah, they can do that. It makes it harder to pump as well. Like you were talking about a windmill pump that kept it going and it's just constantly rolling. It does the garden or goes to the pond or whatever. That's one of those things that those never run dry because they're constantly being used. On the other hand, those seals that seal off the pipe, I've seen those where you turn the thing and you pump it up till it's full, and then you turn the thing and it closes off the pipe to keep your suction so it don't run down. A lot of those were using stock tanks and things where it was too hard to prime it to get it going again. Yeah, K-Town, that's the thing. In the state of Alabama, it is illegal for you to have a residence that is not hooked up to the power grid and hooked up to water and if sewage is available, sewage. Now, having said that, I know people that have hooked things up and they have a power pole brought out and they have a light put on that pole. And the power is then run to the house. And then once they get there, they walk up and go click and turn off the power to the house and powers that pole light. They're paying for that. That's it. They come by and read the meter and there's no power because they're running other means. See, but you have to be hooked up. Same thing with water. They are hooked up to water, and the water goes to whatever. But the garden is watered by something completely different, and that's not going in the house. That's watering the garden. That type deal. So you got to just work with it. Mohammed, greetings to Egypt. Thank you very much. Yeah, Justin, Southern Heat does real good. One of the best things I ever found for a dehydrator? An old car, an old sedan with a lot of glass in it and then big old back windows. We had one when I was a kid, an old 60-something Chevy that all the glass was in it. Well, we had taken out all the interior and basically sealed it up. So you'd open the door and there were racks, wire screen, window screen slid in, and you'd put stuff on that and close that thing up in Alabama sun. By God, it'd dehydrate everything in there, baby. That sucker was an oven. It would suck all the heat out. It would suck all the moisture out. And we dehydrated, vegetables and stuff like that in those things. Till the city came in and told us we couldn't have it no more. But we used it as a dehydrator. Chuck, what was the name of that pipe tobacco again we had the other night? I forgot. Black Duck. BLACKDUCK. Quack, quack. Black Duck. It's 90% of what we had. And 95%. Get that, you should be happy with it. And it's readily available. I believe your tobacco shop, it's like a stock item they get in pipe tobacco. And somewhere at one point, I even had a can. If I remember, next time we do this, I'll try to dig out. Because I think I've got an empty one of the cans somewhere in here that I use for nuts and bolts and stuff. But it's called Black Duck, and I'll get you the parent name of it. Check out William Larkin for fish curing. That's cool. I have seen fish dried before, of course, almost like a jerky. But we didn't do a lot of that. Mostly our stuff was harvested and then frozen. But that really would make sense if you could find a way to do it. I've seen catfish smoked before. That was actually pretty good. I was rather shocked. I was expecting it to be shoe leather, boy. But when it came out of the smokehouse, it was actually pretty good. John Lattermill, yes, it's something that you can close to keep the water from draining back down. And that's basically what that thing I was talking about. It shuts it off. But you got to have some prime. But those that are used fairly regularly, it's how fast it wants to suck back down. See, if you got a strong water flow in the bottom, it will suck faster because that's the flowing out. It's kind of sucking on that pipe like a straw. If it's not, if the water table just kind of sitting there and barely moving, it will not suck the pipe down as nearly as fast. So it's one of the things where a good flow can be a bad thing for prime, and a lousy flow can be a good thing for priming. But you can pump so much, the pipe kind of has to catch up. The suction on the other end slows you down. You got to kind of stop and let more water flow into the area to bring it up, especially if you're trying to fill up something big. Adventures. Blackie, do you ever go bow hunting or mess with archery? I was a archery instructor for BSA, and yeah, I used to hunt with a hickory bow that I made myself. Back in the 90s, I did pretty good bit. I tried every year to go hunting at least 3 or 4 times my bow. I have not done archery in several years, just because of age and my eyesight. I am actually farsighted, which means I can tell you what's going on 1,000 yards real well. But once you get within like 38 inches and you start coming in, things start getting a little less. And I can tell what it is, but I can't read. And what these are is really magnifiers. Because without it, all of that stuff on that side just becomes white lights and dot patterns. And I'd have to do like this to be able to see it. In fact, if I get back here, I can see it better. Well, in archery or something like that, coming up and doing it, it's instinct. Anyway, for me, I never used sights. I was an instinct shooter. So I did pretty good, but I just got to where I wasn't doing that well because I believe my eyesight was causing me problems. And so I got out of doing archery probably about 2005, something like that. I just quit doing it. There was a young man that wanted that hickory bow I'd made really bad. And he had taken 2 deer with it. And so I gave it to him. And I haven't made me another one since. So, but yeah, I did do archery. Chad, are alligator gar fish dangerous? They can be. One is the gar scales on them are rather sharp. And so you think they're slick. They're not. I mean, the actual hide of him can cut you. The teeth that stick out. He's a fish eater and he snatches his head sideways very rapidly. Having said that, unless you're messing with him, trying to pull him in a boat or something, usually they'll leave you alone. They're not something that bothers us or goes after us. You don't have to worry about being in the water. Now, if you were sitting there in the water and had your toes doing like that and he cruised up and didn't recognize you but thought your toes were something edible, yeah, you might go for that. But they are not an animal that's going to give you any trouble, and as long as you just respect it and give it its give it its due. My best friend in high school, Mark Whitfield, and I were standing in Choctawhatchee River down here at Daleville when we were in high school, and our girlfriends are over there. It's a popular hangout place for the teenagers back in those days, and we're in about waist deep water, and we're about I'd say 8 feet apart, talking, and we're looking upstream at our girlfriend saying something. And as I turned, this like 6 foot long alligator gar is like that big around. It porpoised up right between its breeched and went by. He was like that thick, that tall. Think of like a dolphin, but a little longer, but like a dolphin did that right between us. And I'm going like, wow, I hadn't seen one of those up close. Mark was doing his impersonation of walking on water. He apparently had never seen an alligator gar before, and he somehow got out of the water without touching water. He was dry when he got to the bank, you know what I mean? He was out. And I believe that's probably the last time he ever went in the river. We never could get him to go swimming or go back in the river again after that. He called it a freshwater barracuda. But it's not. They're not that aggressive toward us. They're a fish hunter. They eat fish. But catching them can require some respect because that head is lightning fast and those teeth stick out like saw teeth. And so it was a common practice of when someone caught a gar to pull it up and then hit it on top of the head to stun it, not try to pick it up because, again, the scales could cut you because those scales are like saw teeth that he's covered in, and then his teeth and everything. It was better to just cut the line and let him go if you were not targeting the species. And if you did want the species, get him close and hit him in the head and then bring him in the boat. Make sure he was dead, graveyard dead before you ever put him in the boat. Because if he starts flashing around, it's a bad thing. Imagine a pig covered in concertina wire. That's what it'd be like thrashing around in a boat. Adventures, self-made bow. Yeah. Pine bow. Pines can make a good bow. You just got to do a little bit wire. Have you ever read the Bower's Bible, where there's like 4 volumes, I think there is to it, and they talk about pine bows in there. They got to be a different dimension than like a hickory bow or something. I haven't made a pine bow, well, anything serious. Teenagers coming up. I made a bow out of a couple of different things. But the hickory bow is my first serious bow, and it was right at an 80-pound draw. And I was a little younger and studlier back then, and I could pull an 80-pound bow. So the hard part is keeping arrows. one that strong. I wanted something that was powerful. It was, but the problem with it is that even aluminum arrows wouldn't launch many times before they'd start getting kind of warped for that much power slapping into it. And so you didn't have a long shelf life on arrows before you couldn't use them for serious work. No, Chad, you won't have them in Montana. We have them in our rivers down here, but to my knowledge, there's no gar up there. Good night, Washburn. K-Town, what I'm wearing is called Desert Rats, and they're a Marine Corps issue desert boot. And if you'll contact Kaufman's Military Surplus, they're like, I think it's like $40 or $50 a pair. To buy them on the civilian market is like $250. But Kaufman's has them brand new in the box, never issued. And they were like anywhere, I believe it was $40 to $60. It just depended if they're on sale or not. But that's what I wear up until probably May. And then I'll take these off, and I've got basically a Air Force issue jungle boot. They're lighter and cooler than these heavier boots. These are my winter boots, are the Marine Corps Desert Rat, and they've got the Marine Corps emblem on the back side of them. And they're my standard issue boots that I wear most of the time, every day. I prefer boots over shoes because of ankle support and etc. But they get a little warm for me in the heat of the summer, so I'll shift to that lighter jungle boot that's Air Force issue during the actual summer. But you can get them there if you're looking for a pair of boots. Contact those ladies down there at Kaufman's. Again, the phone number is 334-898-1770. And tell the ladies that Blackie sent you and you're looking for a pair of those Marine Corps desert boots, and give them the size, and they should be able to take care of you pretty easy. And they do have the big sizes. I got Dan Lutz, who wore like size 15s, and he was having to custom order all of his boots. And we got down there, and they had those boots, and they were at that time, I think, $50 a pair. And he got 3 pair, so they've got them. Adventures with Sebastian. Go look up Jamie Burley. Jamie teaches a bow class, and I know he's done a couple things online talking. Jamie is very good at teaching how to do the bow and etc. About how to taper it, how to work with it, etc. So Jamie Burley is who you want to talk to. I can make one, but I would be amiss if I didn't point out somebody with greater skill than me. And Jamie Burley absolutely does when it comes to bow making. And I know he puts on a class up at Campcraft with Jason Hunt every year when they have one in June or July. And so you might want to check on that. But yeah, that he's somebody that'd be a real good choice to talk to. Yeah, Pam, they even had snowshoes. We had 2 members of the guys that came down to the gathering, went home with snowshoes. It's the funny thing. You go in there and all the Arctic stuff is there. I mean, they got Polypro Arctic type long underwear, $10 for a top or $10 for a bottom used. They're in great shape. They had $50 for a pair of magnesium all metal snowshoes, military issue. Those are like $200 a piece in Michigan, and had all the attachments and everything. They even had snow sleds down there. So we joke about the fact, I guess the military sent all the Arctic stuff to Alabama, and you're probably going to walk into a surplus place in Alaska and find all the tropical stuff for jungles, Good night, sir. Gordon, do you prefer a recurve or a compound or longbow? Do you prefer a recurved, compound, or longbow? I have shot all three. If it's going to be open archery where we're going to be shooting, just on a range, I like a longbow. I really do. Um, Compound bows are great in deer stands because they're so compact, you know. And I've had a couple of them. I had an Oneida Eagle, one of the very first models they came out with, that was way overpowered. And when you saw the Rambo movie, that bow he was putting together in that movie is an Oneida Eagle. And the very first year of production, that arrow was like 500 feet per second. It was ridiculous. It would strip fletchings off. It was designed for hunting grizzly and big game at close range. And I had one, and I could put an arrow clean through a pine tree. But there were all kind of warnings all over that thing because you had to have a metal arm guard, because if you dared to put an arrow in there that wasn't up to stuff, when you let go, that arrow was just going to grenade. It warns you about that because so many guys had arrow shafts harpoon in their forearm because of that. And so the next year they stepped it down like 150 feet per second. Because that they had so many people get hurt and want to file lawsuits against the company. So I had compound, but I built a hickory bow, fell in love with a hickory bow, and I was always somebody that was an instinct shooter. I didn't use sights or pins or anything. And you go get a compound and it's kind of naked without all that sight on it. But that was me. That's where I shot one. So if you put my feet to the fire and said, pick one, it'd be a self bow. It'd be my first choice just because of experience and time with it. But now for somebody just starting out, I'd recommend a compound because it's much easier to hold it full draw so they can concentrate on their sighting and their release and their breathing rather than having to sit there and hold that weight. So that's just my 2 cents. Kaufman's, which location? It's in Samson, Alabama. Just like in the Bible, Samson, Alabama. Gorbach, good evening, Blackie. What do you grow in your garden starting in the spring? Tomatoes. Right now, I've got 2 different kinds of tomatoes, and I've got a picture. I've actually got little tomatoes now popping up. I've got a couple of them. They're called Early Girl, and they're going to produce tomatoes early on, and they're going to kind of And then I got 2 that's a lot slower to come up, but they produce longer. And then I've also got a couple of squash going. I've got some sweet snap peas going, and I've got about 8 lettuce plants, romaine type lettuce going right now. That's what I got at this moment. Now, in a little later, I'll start adding other stuff. I'll throw in probably 1 or 2 watermelon, 1 or 2 pumpkin in there, and maybe throw in something else like cucumber toward the end and balance that. I'm just adding a little flavor into the diet, more than anything. At this time, I'm not worried about not being able to get vegetables because I live in a place that's surrounded by farms with vegetables. So I could go out pretty easily to the local markets and just load up for cheap. And me and Baron need to do that because when I've done told him, when you get ready for us to start doing some canning, let me know. And we'll just go out and get us a big old pile of something and start canning because I want to learn more. I've got this much working knowledge, enough to be dangerous. And Bear's got extensive knowledge. And so I want to learn from him more about canning and stuff like that. And so we'll see what we can do because I want to start putting up some stuff for that. I've got some stuff, but I want to start practicing putting up stuff more. Go back to take down recurves. Yeah, those can be very usable and compact, easy to carry, easy to store in the off times when you're not using it. Because a lot of guys' bows get damaged in the off season. Because what do you do with it? It's real easy for things to go sideways with it because you can't warp or bend. How do you rest it? To keep it from taking a set or whatever. Well, my first bow I ever made, and I out in the garage between two 2x4s, I just drove 2 nails and I hung it on it. Well, when end of season I put it up there, both the limbs were even. When I came back to it in summer after the heat and everything in that garage, they were like that. This one was turned this way, this one was turned that way. And you couldn't hit a trash can with that thing. So I had to make a new bow, and it was because the way I'd stored it. And so being able to take one apart and take all the tension out of it would be a distinct advantage sometimes. Carlos, hello to Puerto Rico. Thank you very much. Frank, I've done both of them. Now, I do bucket gardens because where we're at, we can have severe storm fronts come through. Remember, where it's hurricane force power, but it's only going to last a couple hours. And that is devastating to a garden, especially like tomato plants, stuff like that. So I put my stuff in buckets so I can pick my garden up and move it onto the porch or move it in the house. And so that's what I typically do. Now, this year I've got a big old wash tub. And in the wash tub, around the outer perimeter, I've got those romaine lettuces. They're going to be harvested pretty soon. They're getting awful close now. And so they'll be disappearing. Over here, I've got the big old squash plant. It's going to take over and dominate this. And over here is the beans, which are crawling up a bunch of sticks I got in there as a framework for them to crawl up and get going. That's all that's in that bucket. So the lettuce is going to be harvested starting, like I said, in about a week. I'm going to go out there and pick the first one. That's going to be the one that's basically up under the squash. I'm going to take it. And then I'll take the end of it, nap it off, put toothpicks on it, put it in water, and let it keep going so it starts resprouting. And once it gets up about that big, I'll transfer it into a fresh bucket and keep rotating it. And so I'll get a couple of times out of that. But it'll take, if I take one a week, it'll take a month, actually a little over 2 months, for me to get every one of those romaines. And then I start transporting them to another bucket. That opens up to allow the squash to start taking over. And then beans are running up, see. And so the two of them together work very, very well together. But the three sisters are putting the corn in, then the squash, then the beans works beautifully. I just didn't want any corn because corn is dirt cheap where I'm at. I can go pick up all I want without having to plant it and then worry about it. And again, that'd be difficult for me to transport in, see, because corn plant, you can't put it in a bucket. You can, but you end up with something that's real top heavy. And then I got a major storm front coming with high winds playing. I can't pick it up and tote it in the house. And so I wanted stuff that was small and easily transportable. K-Town, canning videos. Bear, pay attention, dude. You're up. Pam, we can dry beans better than store-bought. Absolutely. And a big thing is, like down here where we're at, Slocum tomatoes. Fantastic. It's the soil composition. They just have a better tasting tomato. And the tomatoes you buy at the store are really green. They pick them green. They're selected to be a tomato that you can throw at a wall like a baseball and it not bust. A real tomato that got a lot of flavor and taste is fragile, and you really can't ship them very far because they just fall apart. You can't stack them up. But the Slocum tomatoes down there, they're fantastic. It's the soil composition. Vidalia onions is just simply a yellow onion, but the soil composition makes them very sweet. See, and you'll find things that you can grow in your local soil that just does better than average. Peppers, whatever. I want to grow some bell peppers and stuff and put up some of that stuff. K-Town, have you used alcohol stoves? Absolutely. I've got Trangia stoves right now, like 4. They're one of my favorite camping stoves to fire up really quick. They work very, very well for what I'm doing. And that's what I taught Mrs. Blackie to use. She's got a Trangia military type set. Set it down, open it up, pour it in, set it on fire, set the windbreak around it, set the pot in it. When it gets to where you want, hot enough, boiling, whatever, pick it up, pick the windbreak off, take the thing, snuffed it out. That's all you got to know. Nothing to pump, nothing to prime, nothing to whatever. It's on or it's off. And if you spill out the fuel, just let it evaporate. It'll evaporate in a half hour or so, and you ain't got a big mess. So it really is a good thing, especially with people that are not very familiar with stoves. Brian, Blackie, do you have a favorite breed of hen for egg laying? I do not. Most of my coming up, we had a neighbor that had a big chicken yard. And so that's where we got eggs out of, was from them. So my family's had chickens in the past, but I cannot honestly speak to a favorite breed of them. Frank Gray, exactly. You're over on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Beautiful day. Ain't a cloud in the sky. And then thunder starts and suddenly something rolls up out of the Gulf. And a half hour later, you can't see across the road. It's raining 5 inches per hour, 80-mile-an-hour winds. 30 minutes later, clear skies again. Welcome to the South. Jeff Conley, yeah, definitely contact. They will definitely have 15s or 16s. They have up to size like 18. I mean, they had a size 2 and a combat boot. Not for show. U.S. military issue size 2. How would you meet the height requirement if you wore a size 2? I mean, come on. And then they had like all the big ones. Now them, 8s and 9s, they might not have as many of them, but those 14, 15, 16, 18, yeah. Dan had such big feet, he thought, nobody ever has, might have to custom order. We walked in there and she said, shoot, and took him back there, and there were just boxes and boxes of boots. So if you wear big size, contact Kaufman's. Tell the ladies I sent you, they'll hand select, give you the best one available. Adventures. Blackie, how about growing coffee beans? Is it possible in North Bama? I believe it is. One of the things that is one of the driving forces with them down in Columbia and stuff like growing coffee beans is because of the amount of moisture they need in the air. And that's the reason they grow them up on the mountains. And it's that moisture coming up. Well, Bama, we're eat up with moisture. I think you could probably do it. Give it a try. I don't know why they don't industrial grow it down here. I guess because it's just so cheap to get it from down there. But one of the driving forces of it is the plants require so much moisture in the air to keep them from drying out. And Bama dang sure got the moisture. So give it a try. Chuck, exactly. That greenish one you're talking about, that Air Force, that's what I'll shift to in May. It's just mine that size. It's like a jungle boot, but mine's that greenish jungle boot. and they're lighter and cooler in our summer heat. Carlos, my backpacks are, the run we're doing right now is sold out. However, if you will email me at down in letter N dirty woods with an S craft at gmail.com, I will and tell me, put me on the list. I'll add you to the list for the next run, which should be in June, and I'll give you a heads up ahead of time and let you know, like a week out, that we're about to do it, so you can kind of jump into the front of the line. But I don't think I have that handy. Let me see. I did it one time. Wrote my website out on this to show in a video. I don't think I do right now, but it's downanddirtywoodscraft.com, or here on Facebook. I'm Blackie Thomas. Holler at me then if you can't find it, and I will send you where to go, and I'll put you onto that list for the next run. Jay Baker, some females have real small feet. True. Some guys do too. You know, that was the great secret in Hollywood about John Wayne. John Wayne had size 6 feet. That big guy and little bitty feet. You'll never, ever see him barefoot. Even when there's one where he's swimming, he's wearing shoes. And that was the great, Maureen O'Hara was one that finally admitted that. So that was the great secret in Hollywood, was he had small feet. They made boots that looked like they were size 10. But inside of it was a size 6 foot, that the boot was made for his foot. That's one of the reasons he was stabbing his toes. The boots were way too big for him. But if you put shoes that really fit him, it kind of looked funny. Big man, he's itty bitty feet. And so he had little bitty feet. Good night, Frank. Speaking of which, we're about done, guys. We're 1 hour and 52 minutes. John, what's your favorite Swiss Army knife? That is a Victorinox Field Master. I carry it as my EDC pocket knife all the time. I got it on me right now. And it's the Field Master. It's got all the blades that I need. And it's got a saw. It's got a straight pen. It's got a writing pen, all the above. But it's a Victorinox Field Master. That's what I carry. And I have for several years, and I'm very, very happy with it. Yeah, K-Town, where did the time go? I mean, we just get started and it's gone. That's how I felt about the camp out. I mean, months of build up to it, me getting everything done so I can go out there, and then I show up Wednesday. And it's like 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're done. But we just got here, you know. Blackie, it's been 5 days. I know, but it just seems like we just got started. So Pam keeps pushing me. Blackie, you need to make it a week-long event. No, I don't. I was a horse. I could barely talk. I talked so much. I enjoy it. I love spending so much time with people and getting to work with them and etc. Man, I'll just talk myself hoarse. And for all of you that were there, I apologize for talking too much. You know it's me, and that's just part of me. That is a point I didn't think about, Lewis. I don't know how sensitive coffee plants are to frost. I don't know. I don't even know if the plant is a renewable plant, I don't know that much about coffee plants, to be honest. Is it something kind of like a berry bush that just every year bears, beans? Or is it something you plant like peanuts and then harvest the entire plant and then plant again? I don't know. I haven't looked into to coffee beans that much. Jeff, I had a stepbrother that when he turned 16, he had size 14 feet, but he was only like 5'3". And my dad would pick at him and say, heck, son, you'd have been 7 foot tall if you hadn't turned so much down to walk on, you know. But he grew into them feet, but it took him a while. I think last I heard he was like 6'6.5" and like 305 pounds, but solid. So yeah, he grew into them feet, but it's kind of like a puppy dog had to grow into them. Good night, Carlos. Ah, gotcha. They keep harvesting. Well, guys, that's 155, so we're going to call it quits. Thank you all so much for the comments and the talking in the chat. I really appreciate it. And I'll be back on next Thursday night. That's the plan. If you got any questions, hold on to them till then. Throw them at me. And again, for those of you that want to get onto the list for either the Nighthawk or the Blackbird in the next run, if you'll go to Down in Dirty Woodscraft at gmail.com and send me an email and say, put me on the list. I'll be happy to put you on the list for the next run in June. We're thinking June because it's all of the Blackbirds and the Haversacks are supposed to be delivered in the month of May. And so we'll be starting up the next run then. That's the game plan. I talked to Jay the other day and he said everything was on schedule and etc. If we can get it done ahead of time, where things just fall in, we get it done early, then I'll everybody on that list, I will send them to go first. Let them know like a week out, hey, I'm going to be doing a thing. If you would like to go ahead and jump in, here's the information, because you've got a head start before I announce it to everybody else. So anyway, thank you very much, guys, to everybody for commenting and everything. Until next time, safe journeys, guys. Be safe.